let's move on to the next concept, that is tenses. I'm sure all of you might be familiar with tenses. So let's just run through a quick overview or a quick understanding about tenses. Verbs come in three tenses, that is past, present, and future. The past is primarily used to describe the events or the things that happened in the past. And the present is something that is used to describe the things that are happening right now. And the future tense, that's something describes that is yet to happen. So I think you guys can see the examples out there. Moving on. So again, in tenses, we have different types of, tenses. In present tense, we have simple present, present continuous, present perfect, present perfect continuous. In the same way, we have simple past, past perfect, past continuous, past perfect continuous. And in future, it's same again, simple future, future perfect, future continuous, and future perfect continuous. So let's look at the example here by taking one simple example. All right. Now, if we look at the present, past, and the future, we have first step, which is simple present. That is, I read nearly every day. That means we're talking about the present tense. But the same thing becomes a past, then it becomes last night I read an entire novel. And if I were to say the same statement in the future, I would use, I will read as much as I can this year. Now, in the similar way, if we look at the simple present tense in present continuous format, then it would be, I am reading Shakespeare at the moment. And if with the same statement have to be in the present perfect, I have read so many books I can't keep count. And present perfect continuous, I have been reading since 4 years old. Now, moving on, we have simple past. Last night I read an entire novel. Past continuous would become, I was reading Edgar Allan Poe last night. And past perfect would be, I had read at least 100 books by the time I was 12. Past perfect continuous. So that would be, I have been reading for at least a year before my sister learned to read. Now, moving on to simple future, I will read as much as I can this year. In the future continuous, I will be reading Nathaniel Hawthorne soon. In the future perfect, I will have read at least 500 books by the end of the year. Future perfect continuous, I will have been reading for at least 2 hours before dinner tonight. Now, the difference here is, if you observe keenly, in the first set, the simple present, I read nearly every day. Now, in the present continuous, that means that action is still ongoing, right? That's what is clearly mentioned, which is continuous. And present perfect, I have read so many books I can't keep count. So that means a perfect tense that is happening at the moment, which happened, or which is happening. Now, a present perfect continuous, I have been reading. Basically, the difference is, in continuous, you would say I am, and you have an ing form, which to describe the continuous form. And in the perfect, it becomes I have read instead of read. And in present perfect continuous, you generally use have been. All right. And it's the same thing when it go to past, it becomes had been and would have been in the future. And if it's a past perfect, I would use had read. And if it is a future, I would say I would have read or I will have read. And if it's a past continuous, I would say instead of am, I would say I was, because that's what the present was in am. And in future, I would use I will be. And simple past is, again, as you all know, it's simple past tense. So last night I read an entire novel, and the future would be I will read as much as. Basically, in it's always present I, and continuous I am, and ing form. And present perfect would be I have read, and present perfect continuous would be I have been. So the structure typically follows the same thing. I'm pretty sure by having this screen up here, you would be able to differentiate how this happens. And I'm sure all of us have gone through this during our school days. So that's the session for today with respect to basic grammar.